Merry meet. The wheel of the year turns once again, and we find ourselves on the brink of Mabon season. So, Mabon is a time of the year that is infused with balance, the energies of balance, of gratitude, and abundance. And for this reason, there are many witches that celebrate Mabon as the Witches' Thanksgiving. So, we're going to be talking about all of this tonight, as well as many ways that you can celebrate Mabon and bring some Mabon magic into your life. So, Merry Meet. I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin, and tonight's episode is all about Mabon magic. So, I'm going to start off by talking about the origins of Mabon. Where does it come from? Where does the word Mabon come from? How do we celebrate as modern witches? How do we celebrate Mabon? And by the time this episode's over, you'll have some ideas of how you can celebrate. And I also want to make a note that just like all of the Sabbats, it's not just this one singular day. So in just a moment, we'll be talking about what the actual day of Mabon is. But really, what that does is it opens the door to this part of the Wheel of the Year, which is an entire season, which is around 5 to 6 weeks. So even if you don't have time to take advantage of some of these ideas right now, you have 5 or 6 weeks to do it before Samhain comes. So, saying hi to everyone here. Merry meet, everyone. I see Michelle and Kurt are here in the chat. Hi, guys. And some of you may know I have COVID right now. I'm pretty ill, but because I skipped the episode last week due to the election debate, I'm here tonight, and I didn't want to miss this episode because next week will be past the start of Mabon. So I want to make sure that people had some ideas on how to celebrate. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the actual date of Mabon is and where Mabon comes from. So the fall equinox is a date that varies year to year. It will take place between the 20th and the 22nd. And in this particular year, 2024, the fall equinox falls on September 22nd. That's this Sunday. And there's actually a time of that, and that is at 5:45 a.m. Pacific, 8:45 p.m. or 8:45 a.m. Eastern. And that is the very moment of the fall equinox. And what that means is that it's the day of equal light and equal darkness. So the daytime and the nighttime will be of the same length. Now, just like the first quarter moon and the last quarter moon of a lunar cycle, the equinoxes, both the fall equinox and the spring equinox, are considered transition spaces. That means that they mark the places in between two different energies as we transition from one to the other. So in this particular case with Mabon, we're transitioning from summer to fall. And so what happens is at the transition spaces, naturally the veils thin a bit anyway. But because of where we are in the wheel of the year, us being in the second half of the wheel, the land has begun to die. It's something that we didn't see as much back at Lughnasadh, but this actually began back at Litha, in fact, at the summer solstice. The days started to get shorter and shorter, and we entered the dying half of the year. Now, here at fall equinox, this becomes something that is very apparent to us. You can look outside and you can very much see that the sun is setting much earlier than it was just a month ago, and that the sun is also rising later than it was just a month ago. So that becomes more and more apparent. Now, if you know the story, the Wiccan story of the Wheel of the Year, that includes the god and the goddess, this is the time of the year when there's a descent into the underworld that begins. Now, we'll be talking a little bit more about that in a moment, but that is an important point for us to know about Mabon, because what it does is it ushers in, this is a moment for us to find some balance in our lives and offer some gratitude for what we've received in over the past year. But this is also a time for us to begin to prepare for that kind of inward journey that many of us take as we go into the dying half of the year. Now, modern pagans celebrate Mabon as the second of the harvest festivals. So there are three harvest festivals. The first one was celebrated at Lughnasadh and tends to be a celebration of the grains. And the second harvest, now Mabon, is the harvest of fruit and of like the fall gourds, squashes, vegetables like that. The third harvest festival is at Samhain, and that is traditionally is the harvest of meat. So we'll talk more about that in 6 weeks when we get to Samhain. But for now, let's kind of talk about Mabon. As I mentioned, fall fruits like apples, pomegranates, fall vegetables, squash, gourds. All of these are traditionally harvested, then blessed, and in some traditions are sacrificed back to the land as a thank you for everything that the earth and the land has given us, but also as a way to ensure that the cycle continues the next year. This was a form of sympathetic magic that many of our ancestors engaged in. So there is evidence that the holiday of Mabon is named after a Welsh god who has that same name, Mabon. Mabon was the son of the goddess Modron. Now, Modron is essentially considered the embodiment of the earth. She is, or the personification of the earth. She is the earth goddess. Now, Mabon, her son, when he became Mabon, his name means light bringer or son of light. He was born at the fall equinox, and there are many different stories, different variations of this, but at some point in his story, he was kidnapped. So some say he was kidnapped for 3 days, others say he was kidnapped for 3 years. But during that time that he was abducted, he was taken into the underworld that is called Modron's womb. So remember, Modron, his mother, is the embodiment of the earth. So inside of her, in the underworld, is her womb. So he's taken into her womb. There are variations of the story that say, eventually after those 3 days or those 3 years, he was rescued by animals. Some say an eagle or an owl. There are some stories that even say a salmon, a blackbird, or a stag came and rescued him. And in still other stories, it's said that King Arthur was the one who saved him. But while he was in the womb, Modron's womb, this is the most important part, is that it was a place of challenge. It was also a place of nurturance. And I think what's really important about that, and we will be talking a bit about shadow work later, but it is the place of our shadow work. We don't do shadow work out in the light. Generally, we're digging down into our unconscious, and you can think of the underworld as our unconscious. And so while Mabon was there, he was nurtured just as we are during our shadow work, but he was also challenged. And when it was over, he had grown in such intelligence and wisdom and strength that that is when he became the son of light or the light bringer. And then when he came back to the earth, he brought that with him. So to me, it's very important, like I said, we'll talk more about shadow work, but a very important analogy to our own shadow work. Now, there are obvious connections to Mabon's story to other gods and goddesses. For example, Persephone and Demeter's story. Persephone returns to the underworld at the fall equinox, and then she returns back to the earth at the spring equinox. So I think that it's also important for us to look at across other cultures, across many different cultures, you'll see other stories like this, right? Where a god is descending into the underworld, or perhaps a goddess like Inanna, and then returning back out, changed, born of wisdom, right? Stronger, wiser, more intelligent. Now, there are also other festivals across cultures that have that theme of harvest to it as well. So we have a lot of kind of different themes, going on here at Mabon. And one particular festival that I think is noteworthy is the corn dance of the Iroquois. And this was actually the original Thanksgiving when it would have been celebrated in the colonies here, I guess before they were even colonies. But the Thanksgiving that we celebrate today in the United States, that takes place on the fourth Thursday of November, is not when it was originally celebrated. And so, for this reason, that October 3rd date, or near the end of September, early October, is why many witches adopt Mabon as the witches' Thanksgiving. And just a note of why Thanksgiving was changed to November is that in 1939, in an effort to help out the stagnant economy during the Great Depression, Franklin D. Roosevelt moved the Thanksgiving festival to the end of November. So to me, though, as a witch and just somebody following the wheel of the year, Thanksgiving doesn't. Oh, I should back up for a moment. It was in order to stimulate the economy, like I said, but it was to extend the Christmas buying season. So, during the Depression made a lot of sense. Afterwards, maybe doesn't make as much sense, right? And so, for me, as a witch who follows the wheel of the year, Mabon feels much, much more like Thanksgiving. It's full of that energy of gratitude, as opposed to when we get into the end of November, we're moving towards Yule. It's a totally different energy. So, so this is a time for us to kind of take stock of what we have been gifted over the course of the prior part of the wheel of the year, see what we've been provided with, be grateful for that, both for the things that we've received and for the things that we haven't received yet. Because there's a lot of magic in having gratitude for the gifts that you trust and have faith are coming. So, I'm fading a little bit with the COVID. I'd say I'm just pausing just for a moment to catch my breath and say hi to some people here. Hi, I see Danielle's in the chat, and hi, Danielle, and Debbie's here, and Sonia, hi, and Jamie. Hi, everybody. And then I can't see the chat underneath that. It's frustrating here. Let me see if I can see that. Yeah, I can't see anything below that, but I'll come back in a second and it'll probably show me. Okay, so I wanted now to shift over to talk about a few things that we can do to celebrate Mabon. And I hear my air conditioning just turned on as well, so there's a small hum in the background, but I can't turn it off right now because I'm so hot right now. Okay, so how do we celebrate? So the first obvious thing to do during Mabon is the witches' Thanksgiving. So during the witches' Thanksgiving, it's like, what do you do at normal Thanksgiving? Well, you have food, right? And most of the time people will say a prayer over the food and then they break bread together and share in the spirit. Okay, so nobody can hear now. Okay. Okay, give me 1 second. I don't know why that would have happened. Still can't hear, huh? This is like the last thing I need right now for this to malfunction on us. Okay, it might be the air conditioning. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm just gonna stand up real quick and turn that off. We just have to do our best when we're sick. Okay, others say they can hear just fine. Okay. Oh, okay. You're saying you can't hear that. I don't know how many of you have had COVID, but my brain is completely addled right now. I can't even think straight. Okay, so just like at normal Thanksgiving, right? You break bread together, you bless the food, you enjoy the company of other people. So, one thing you could do for the witches' Thanksgiving is to bring in some fresh produce. So, if you have a garden of your own, you can bring in produce from there. If you don't have a garden, go to the store or the farmer's market, and I would recommend getting local produce, things that are going to be in season right now. So, honestly, this can be anything. You can get seasonal fruits, you can get seasonal vegetables. You infuse that food with the energy of gratitude, with your blessings for it, and also any intentions that you have. So if you want to draw in abundance, you can infuse that food with your desire for that abundance. If you want to draw in love, if you want to draw in peace, right, healing, whatever intention you have, you can infuse that food with your intention, and then infuse it, right? Now, then what you could do is depends on what it is. If it's fruit or something like that, you could just consume it right away, taking in those intentions. Or you could prepare it in a meal for later. You could eat it yourself, or you could also share it with others with that blessing. Now, it's also, like I mentioned earlier, traditional to sacrifice part of the food back to the land. So, what you can do then is just take a portion of the food. I like to take it before I've eaten it, take a portion of it, and leave it out somewhere. So, I have this tree in my front yard, and I like to leave offerings there, but you can find somewhere else in nature where you can leave that offering. Um, okay, so just pausing for a second here. Okay. Uh, Okay, Kurt was saying corn mazes are fun too. Yeah, they are, and this is a good time of year when people are going to be building those. So the second thing that we can do, oh, actually, before I go on, I did want to show this because I forgot to show it last year when we were talking about Mabon, and I really wanted to show it now because this is a good time to start this. So this is a squash that is several years old. And so if you put, I put several of these outside in the sun, and one of them rotted, but this one, I don't know if you can hear it. Yeah, you probably can next to the microphone. So it dries out so that just the seeds are inside and it forms a rattle. Now this can then be painted, it can be decorated, and this can be used at Samhain when you are calling in the ancestors. It's often traditional to shake rattles. But what a neat idea, right? And if you start this right now, go get a squash when you if you're going to do a Mabon, which is Thanksgiving, you can get some squash, and you could put one outside and see if this turns into a little rattle for you as well. So just a neat craft idea. Kids really like it too, but I love it for uh, the for Samhain ritual later. Okay, so next thing that you can do for Mabon. So kind of going along that idea of gratitude is you can make a gratitude list or even better a gratitude jar. The gratitude list is very simple, is just what it sounds like. You make a list of all the things that you are grateful for. The gratitude jar is similar, but instead of just writing down on the list all the things you're grateful for, you write them down on slips of paper, put them inside the jar, and then you can put it somewhere. You could put it on your altar, you can just put it somewhere. And if you're having a bad day like me, having COVID like this, you could then reach into the jar and pull out some of those things to read. And it just reminds you, it can be very uplifting, like when you're feeling down and bad about something, to be able to look at all of the things that you have to feel grateful for. Because sometimes when we're in our low moments, it can be hard, right? It can be hard to see past where we are. And that gratitude jar can kind of kick us out of it. So I like that as an idea. But definitely in the spirit of gratitude, just anything that you can do to feel gratitude. Maybe it's a good time to start a daily gratitude practice if you don't already have one. I like to think for a few minutes right when I wake up before I get out of bed, just in my mind, just recite some of the things that I'm grateful for. It starts the day off in a very nice way. So it's Mabon is a good time to put that into practice if you don't already have something like that. Okay, next idea is to work with the heart chakra. So, the heart chakra is the bridge between the spiritual and the physical, which means that it helps to balance out all of the chakras. So, I also think that it helps us to kind of connect our physical being to our spiritual being as well. But at the same time, the heart is space is something that can open up, and so it very much goes along with that idea of gratitude. Now, many of us are very closed down in the heart. You know, the society that we live in, the part of the cycle that we have decided to incarnate into being on earth at this time, a very difficult place to be, right? And so there's a lot of traumas and bad things that just shut the heart space down. So I think Mabon is a good time to spend some time working with your heart. You can use the seed sound yum. It's spelled Y-A-M, but it's pronounced yum. And this is a seed sound, for those who don't know, is a sound that usually a couple of syllables, one to a few syllables long, that has meaning to it, but also changes the energetic vibrations of the person who says it, who utters it, or who hears it. And so that's what's very special about Sanskrit being a vibrational language. There's multiple layers, right? The meaning of yum is, love, the heart, right? But what it also does is it when you vibrate with that sound, you open up your heart space. So it can be a very simple thing to do, and what I recommend people do is do it along with a mudra. Like I particularly like the Garuda mudra, and I think I showed this one last year. But the Garuda mudra is where you take the palm of your right hand, and it could be the other hand if you want, but I usually take the palm of my right hand, and then you just place it on the back of the left hand. And then you interlock your thumbs like that, and you spread the fingers out. And so you could just place that over your heart, and then you can use the seed sound yum. And I'm not going to intone it because I hear my voice right now. But when you do say the sound, you want to say it kind of long, and you do it low in your body. So you don't want it like really high up in the throat, but try to make that sound come from low down in your belly. And then I would just chant that sound for a minute or two, and that can really help you to remove some blockages in your heart chakra. Now, another thing that you can do is the loving kindness meditation. You can do that while doing the Garuda Mudra. And the loving kindness meditation is where you sit in meditative thought for a bit of time, and you begin to think about a person who's in need, somebody that you know who could use some help, and you send out through your mind, you send out the intention of love and kindness to that person. And you spend a bit of time doing that. You can even see them receiving it. And then from there, you move on to a person that you have a conflict with. And so then you also send them love and kindness. Now, it doesn't mean that you're saying, oh, the conflict's over, or you're forgiving them for what they might have done to you. It's just simply, we're just sending them a bit of good energy. That's it. From there, you move on to a third person, which is someone who you don't really know, but someone maybe you passed them on the street, or a clerk in a store, or someone you had an interaction with that seems like they could use some good energy. And then you spend some time thinking about that person, and you send them that love and kind energy. And you can see them receiving it. And then you move on to yourself, which can be hard for some people, but you send that love and kindness to yourself. And then finally, you send it out to the universe. So, with the kind of political climate happening right now, something like the loving kindness meditation can be really powerful, both for you, but just also have reverberations into the ether, right? Can you imagine if so many of us did that? I really do think it has an effect, right? When we send out intentions, we do have a positive effect on outcomes around us. So something something nice to think about. Other ways to work with the heart chakra, you can work with the color green. That's the color associated with the heart chakra. Green stones. I also like pink for the heart chakra. So rose quartz is one of my favorites for this. But ruby zoisite is also a great one because it has that pinkish and the green color all in one stone. And then finally, a few other things for the heart chakra, just any poses that help you open up the heart. So if you're somebody who does yoga, camel pose is very good, though it can be challenging. Cobra pose is often easier for people. And then the bridge pose is also very good for the heart. And just anything where you open up your chest, so just interlacing the fingers behind the back, trying to press the palms together, and then just lifting the heart. Like I like to think about a ribbon tied to the heart that's just lifting it up to the ceiling. So those are some ideas for the heart chakra. Now, the next thing is to contemplate what areas of your life need some balance, because we talked about Mabon being a great balancing time. And so this is a time for you to think about what in my life is in balance and what in my life is out of balance. So, me being sick as I am like this, I've contemplated this a lot, because I always think about, oftentimes sickness will come when we are out of balance. If we were more in balance, our immune system might be able to fight it off. Okay, maybe, maybe not. But it is always a time for us to think about, what led to this. And so I've done a lot of contemplation on this, and I know that work is imbalanced in my life. There's more work than there should be and not enough rest. And so being sick forced me to rest a lot, but it's also made me think about how to get more rest and less work in my life as I move forward, right? So that I don't have to return to this place. But we don't have to be sick in order to think about it, because if we use those times like now, like we use the fall equinox or the spring equinox, or every single cycle on the third quarter, for example, you could spend some time thinking about balance and make some subtle shifts that help bring you back into it. So there is something called a balance wheel, and I tried to Google this earlier just to see if it was like a standard name for it, and it doesn't look like it is. There's a lot of weird things that come up when you type in balance wheel. I'm going to be sharing a picture of one in the Shadow Seekers Facebook group, not Shadow Seekers, in Body Mind Witchcraft tomorrow. So you can look for a post on that. I'll try to put it in the chat here afterwards to put the picture, but all that a balance wheel really is you draw a wheel and then you divide it up into, between 8 to 10, 12 pieces, like a pie. And then in each of those pieces, you write a word that represents like an area of your life. So examples would be like work, play, sleep, self care, health, relationships, fun, different things like that, right? Money, expenses. So anything that feels like it's an aspect of your life, you write it in that pie. And then what you do is like, I draw sort of like some concentric circles, and you sort of think about like if you like all the way out at the edge of the circle, sort of imagine that being like the number 10. And all the way at the middle of the circle, think of that being a 0. And then you're going to rate yourself in that wheel. So let's say like right now I'm getting a lot of sleep, so that would probably be rated like a 10 right now. But I'm not doing any yoga or anything like that because I've been so sick. So like my physical activity would probably be rated kind of low. I might put that at a 2. And but you will you'll just put that into the circle somewhere. And when you see the picture of it, it'll probably make a little bit more sense, but you can make these yourself for sure. But what it does is it offers you a visual representation of what's in balance and what's out of balance. And then it gives you some things to think about, right? So, how am I going to bring things more back into balance? So that is one idea. Another thing I also think it's important to think about when we're at Mabon is the idea of time too. Is how do we balance our time? How much time do you spend filling yourself up versus how much time do you spend like being depleted, right? And so it's inevitable that there are things in life that deplete us, but we have to be able to find things to fill us up too. So a good contemplation, like to me, that would be a really good question to contemplate for even for shadow work or something. Get into a really nice, comfortable, meditative pose, and then just think about that question about time. How do we spend our time? And then another thing for balance, this is just a simple kind of yogic practice, but you can do Nadi Shodhana, which is alternate nostril breathing. And so this is basically where you just block off one nostril. So usually you take the thumb and you block off the right nostril and you breathe in through the left nostril. And then you block off the left nostril. Usually I do it with my ring finger. And then you breathe out through the right. And you breathe back in through the right, close that off, and you exhale through the left. And you just go back and forth, breathing back and forth between the two nostrils. And so what this does is it helps to balance the masculine and the feminine channels of our energy in the body. And when we bring ourselves energetically more into balance, we bring ourselves physically more into balance, and it just makes all of this easier. So I like that practice. You could try that practice and then sit down and contemplate balance or try to do a balance wheel or something like that. Okay, so let me just pause for a moment and see what's going on in the chat. And again, I can't, let's see here. Can't really see it now. Okay, so next idea is to build a Mabon altar. So the Mabon altar is pretty much just using the colors of the season and some of the symbols of the season. Now, the Mabon altar is meant to be a temporary altar as opposed to a permanent altar. And so some people will have a place in the house where they have a permanent altar that they just change off every season and make it, now we'd make it Mabon. Next season it would be Samhain and then on to Yule. But you can also just, if you just have a regular altar and maybe you don't have even a lot of room in the house, that's totally fine. You can even take the top of a bookcase and put a little cloth over it, and you can make yourself a small altar that way. But things that you could use on a Mabon altar, colors like red, orange, yellow, brown, gold, colors of fall, purple, and also symbols like fruits and the vegetables of the season, like we talked about earlier, apples, grapes, pomegranates, other fruit of the fall, squash and gourds, leaves. The cornucopia is a big symbol of Mabon because of that connection to abundance. Acorns, pine cones, different things that you have gathered out in nature can go there as well. And then you can make this Mabon altar like that. And what you would be really nice too is that before, if you decided you wanted to do the witch's Thanksgiving and you gathered some food for that, perhaps either from your own garden or you went to the farmer's market or the store, and you could leave those offerings on your altar before you do your witch's Thanksgiving, and they could also be symbols of the season on your Mabon altar. Now you can also work with deities that are connected to this part of the wheel of the year. So there's a couple of different archetypes that we would usually think about during Mabon. One would be the Earth Grain Mother, because this is a harvest festival. We are honoring the Earth Mother, so the Earth Grain Mother makes a lot of sense. The Messenger and Magician God sometimes makes less sense to people, but the magician and the messenger god is the walker between the worlds. So this is the one who can move from outside or up above ground into the underworld. And then sometimes people will also work with underworld deities during this time, though I think that that is better at Samhain and further into the darker half of the wheel. But this is a time when, like I mentioned, Persephone begins her descent into the underworld. So underworld deities are also very relevant here. So some particular deities you can use are obviously Mabon and his mother Modron. So those would be two that would be great to call. Demeter, or the Roman Ceres. Persephone, Epona, Cernunnos, Rhiannon, Gaia, Dionysius, Bacchus, and Pachamama. And that is not an exhaustive list, just some ideas for deities that you could work with during Mabon. So, and just so you know, too, you could stack some of these ideas together. You could do the witch's Thanksgiving and call in Pachamama or something like that, or call in Gaia. In our own uh, coven, in the Shadow Seekers group, we're going to be doing a witch's Thanksgiving on Sunday, and we are going to be working with Demeter. Though last year we worked with Pachamama and we did a gratitude for the earth ritual. Okay, so a couple of more ideas, and then we'll move on and see if there are any questions for the Q&A. And let's see. Looks like I could see maybe some of the comments now. I see. Um, it's weird. It says there's 35 comments, and it's like, I could see the last one was 17 minutes ago, so I know there's like got to be more down here. Oh, well. Okay, I'll try to. Oh, here I see a few. Yeah, I see Lacey's here. And then I see some comment from Cindy, but I can only read like the first line of it. So hopefully this will refresh and I'll be able to see more in a moment. Okay, so next idea is doing some shadow work. So for those of you who do shadow work, you're just probably naturally doing it periodically. But I think that this is a really good time for shadow work because of that transition space that we're in right now. And we're starting to transition into the darker half of the wheel, which opens up some space for us to contemplate the more internal things. So, going back to the story of Modron that we talked about in the beginning, Modron and Mabon. So, when Mabon goes into Modron's womb, it is said that the womb is very nurturing and that it is also a place of challenge. And so we shy away from challenges sometimes because we are, maybe we feel like we're too overwhelmed, or we can't really, maybe we won't do it well enough or something. But the things that challenge us tend to be the ones that transform us in the more profound ways. If we just kind of go about our life and don't really challenge those things that, you know, are mysterious about ourselves, or perhaps the things that we know there's something holding us back, but if we just kind of go on about our day and our lives like that, well, we're never really going to make the significant changes that we could, and we probably won't be able to step into the life that we really desire unless we face those things. And so I think that Mabon's story very much tells us that same thing, right? It's a great analogy for going into the darkness, going into the womb, going into your unconscious, and exploring what's there. And so when Mabon returns, he is the light bringer. So when we go into the unconscious and we face those aspects of ourselves, those shadow aspects, and we shine that light on them, they're no longer able to control us. They're no longer mysterious. It no longer feels like things are being done to us, that we're at the whim of kind of the universe. It's us now taking some control. And we become the light bringer too, right? And what I also think is very transformative about shadow work is not only does it transform us when we do it, but I think it also can have that effect on other people, because as they hear us talk about it, or even simply maybe we don't even talk about it, they just see us change. They see us better. Many people who do shadow work will tell you that uh, loved ones will say, I don't know what's different about you, but something is, and it's really great. But they see us becoming healthier and stronger and wiser, and not as influenced by negative energy and emotions, and not swayed by things all the time, right? And it sometimes can challenge them to try to do some work on themselves as well. So it brings light out of the darkness for many, many people. So great time to be doing shadow work. This isn't the shadow work episode, but I will be doing another one soon, of course. But if you don't know much about shadow work, I suggest you check out our Body Mind Witchcraft YouTube channel, where we have tons of videos, free videos on shadow work. And of course, for those who are in our Shadow Seekers membership, we are always working on our shadow work there. Okay, so next idea, I think I've just got two more here. Perform a house blessing. So this is a good time for doing a house blessing. If you have a new apartment or a new home, now's the perfect time for that. But even in a home or a place that you've lived for a long time, you can always do a house blessing. So there's a couple of different ideas I have. This is not the only things you could do, but I like to make a house blessing sachet. So this is where you just get a piece of cloth or fabric, and then you can put stones, herbs, different items in it, a key, symbols of, kind of the blessings you want in your home. You could put little charms like dollar signs, if you want to attract money, hearts if you want to attract love, various different things like that. Some herbs that would be good for a house blessing sachet: chamomile, rosemary, rose petals is good for bringing in love. White willow, vervain, yarrow, lavender, and salt or black salt. And you don't have to put all these herbs, just a couple. Let yourself be called to what feels good. And then you will sprinkle those into on top of the cloth. Put any of the other extra things you want in there. Acorn is good, or like I mentioned, a key, different symbols like that. And then you'll basically close it all up and then tie it with a ribbon and then you can hang it somewhere. Typically, it's hung above a door, but it can also be carried with you. In this case, since you're doing a house blessing, though, I would suggest hanging it somewhere in your house. Another option is to go room to room and bless the rooms. So you can do this in a lot of different ways. You can sweep, that's a good one. So typically, I would go sweep counterclockwise, kind of through the room, sweeping out any negative energy. And then you can come back through again and sweep clockwise, kind of drawing in positive energy into the space. You can go room to room and do that. When our coven has done house blessings, like when we did one here, when we got this house, I I led everybody, I think, with the sweeping, and then there was somebody who was ringing bells. That's another good way to go room to room and ring bells for cleansing. There was somebody else who was kind of asperging with water, so just tossing water out to the corners. You can toss salt out to the corners of the room. So there's a lot of different ways. You can use like a sage stick, and you can go again. You can go around the room and cleanse the room that way through smoke cleansing. So a lot of different ways that you can bless your home, but this is a really good time of the year to do it. And then I think my final idea here is to perform spells for abundance. So typically these are performed at Lughnasadh. Lughnasadh is really the prosperity Sabbath, but this is still a time of abundance. So you can absolutely do a witch's ladder for prosperity and abundance at Mabon. You can do a money bowl or a money jar or a money spell of any kind. You can write on bay leaves the amount of money that you need, or the certain thing that you want to draw in, the abundance you want to draw in, and then burn those. So those would just be different ways that you can, bring some more abundance into your life. Now, I've told you a lot of ideas here, so don't get overwhelmed and think they all have to be done on Sunday the 22nd, because remember, Mabon is just the beginning of the season. That actual day is just the beginning of a season that you now would have about 5 weeks before we start to transition into Samhain, and you could do any of these during that time. Now, before we go to the Q&A, I wanted to just mention a bit about the moon tonight. So I didn't do a full moon episode tonight because I've done some in the past, and this was Mabon. This is the we're only a few days away from Mabon, and if I waited till next week to do a Mabon episode, we'd already be past the beginning of it. So I wanted to do this tonight, but it is important to talk about the full moon for those, especially those who are here live. So the full moon tonight is the harvest moon. Now, all that really means is the harvest moon is what we call the moon in September, and September's full moon. Now, tonight is also a supermoon, which means that when it rises, it will look bigger in the sky than usual, and it's also a partial lunar eclipse. Now, before people get really panicked, sometimes people panic about eclipses, which I honestly don't feel that you need to ever panic about eclipses. Some people say that their energy is very chaotic. To me, it's just if a person's feeling kind of like their energy is chaotic on an eclipse, it just should be a time to sort of relax, rest, do some self care. Otherwise, many people feel just fine on eclipses. Now, this particular partial lunar eclipse is a very partial eclipse. But I'm going to give you all the times tonight and where and when you can go and view it if you want. So the full moon peaks tonight. So tonight is Tuesday, September 17th. It's going to peak tonight at 7:34 p.m. Pacific. So that's in just a little over an hour, 10:34 p.m. Eastern. And the eclipse will be at its maximum 10 minutes later. So at 7:44 p.m. Pacific, 10:44 p.m. Eastern, or if you're across the Atlantic, you'll have to convert to your own time. It will be visible for anybody who is in North America. For most parts of North America, I believe it's visible. And I believe it will be visible in Europe as well because it will still be nighttime there. So the moon will be 9% obscured. I'm going to go out myself and look at it too to see what it looks like, but it's not going to be it's not a total eclipse. You won't just see the whole thing kind of darken or redden, but there will be a visible change to the moon. So it'll be kind of interesting to look at. And I just wanted to share that with anybody because in about an hour or so, you can go outside and check it out if you want. Okay. Jenny said that the moon looks amazing there tonight. So she's on the East Coast. So we are still, the sun hasn't set here yet, so we can't see it yet. But I bet it's going to look really pretty because not only the harvest moon tends to have it can have like an orangish cast to it already. And when it's a super moon, it will sometimes have that orange cast. And then with this eclipse, it's going to look really neat in about an hour. So, all right. So I am going to move on to the Q&A, and it looks like for the most part, I think I'm seeing all of the comments. Okay. So anybody who's here, if you guys are here live, you could feel free to put some comments in the chat if you have any questions you want to ask. I have a question that was given to me by Tom, so I did want to talk about this one first, and then I'll go into the chat and see if anybody's got anything here, okay? Okay, so Tom said, how can I deeply dive into my shadow and connect with it? Okay, so it's a good question, especially we were talking about Mabon being a time for shadow work. So I think that the real trouble with shadow work sometimes is that people don't know what to do, and Tom's question is very relevant to others as well, I'm sure. So you have to find a way that you can connect to your shadow. And I'm going to offer a couple of suggestions. But I think above all, I think the most important thing is regularity. Your shadow is in your unconscious, and it's a part of you that's difficult to access. If it weren't difficult to access, everybody would be able to just know exactly the causes of all of their all of the different things they do, the things that motivate them, they'd know all of this, right, if your shadow was so simple to access. But it's in the unconscious, and it doesn't really speak in language that we can understand most of the time. Sometimes it speaks in symbols, which is the language of the unconscious. And what that means is we need to befriend it, and we need to know how to speak to it. And so the befriending part is really about the regularity. So if we're somebody who just dabbles in shadow work, you absolutely can, you can absolutely have a positive impact on yourself even by dabbling, right? So even if all you do is every once in a while you think about a shadow work prompt or you journal about one, it's definitely going to have an impact on you in a positive way. But the people who tend to see better success with shadow work are the ones who are cyclically kind of working with it. And so that's like in our Shadow Seekers membership, it's designed so that people are, offered different things to think about periodically, across all the different cycles. So we will do workshops on the chakras and the shadow side of the chakras. Working with the chakras and their shadow aspects can be a really great way to tap into to your shadow. But we'll do things like that. We look at like astrological things that impact our shadow. We work with archetypes. We work with the inner child. So if you don't have a group like ours to do shadow work with, then what you have to do is you got to find that way on your own. So I would recommend is dedicating a part of every lunar cycle to doing a bit of shadow work and see if that helps. For me, that's usually going to be in the waning part of the cycle, like near the dark moon and the balsamic moon, the last week of the cycle during the waning crescent. You can do it then. And you can start by doing shadow work prompts. You can Google shadow work prompts and get some off of the internet and just start thinking about those during that time. Just the very process of thinking about it, even if not a lot comes up for you right away, just the fact that you're doing it and then you come back the next month and the next month and the next month means that you are beginning to work with your shadow. But I think that another thing that you can do is to, think about the problems that you have. Think about the areas in your life where you have fears or you have addictions or you have habits that you'd like to break. Think about where those origins might come from, right? So somebody who has a fear of something may feel powerless to that thing until they start to trace it back. When's the first time you can remember in your life being afraid of that thing? What was happening during that time? Who was there? What did they say? What did they do? What other times in your life were you afraid of it? Starting to figure out where it comes from can be part of our shadow work as well. And working with the inner child is another thought too. So your inner child was there when our shadow was essentially formed and can become a powerful ally for our shadow work too. So you could start to take your inner child out on inner child dates. Just go do something that you loved as a kid, or eat a food that you loved as a kid. Buy yourself a toy. Allow yourself to have fun. You don't have to have kids in order to buy a toy. Let your inner child out to play, and immediately it can become a ally to you in your shadow work. But you have to find a way, like Tom said, you got to find a way to connect. So you got to have some kind of a jumping off point, whether that's going to be, inner child work, or maybe some chakra work, like you're working with the root and then you start working with the shadow aspects of the root, right? With the parts of us that feel fearful, that feel unstable, that feel like we have to hold on to things or something like that, or the parts of us that can't ground. Starting to work with those aspects of ourselves can start to reveal the parts of our shadow. So I hope that helps. And again, if you want to do it in a group setting where you're supported, we have our Shadow Seekers membership too. And many people who are in that will tell you that it's been very beneficial to them. They tried to do this on their own. And like I said, you absolutely can do it on your own. But sometimes it can be a lot easier when you have a group who's supporting you, that you can ask questions of and share with, and then you have some things to do, right? All right, so let me go into the chat. Let's see if there's any questions here. I see that Cindy said that she she so was always drawn to spirits. 2 years ago was her first visit to really realizing that she needed a deeper connection to her past. And that's when she found Body Mind Witchcraft Facebook group. So she was diagnosed with a rare form of breast cancer. She's learned how to meditate and allow her mind to stop and breathe, which is so, so, so important, right, when we're healing. She said that she's definitely learned. She said chakras are very important, and now she's going to speak to her gods and goddesses, Cernunnos. And Cernunnos is a deity that's very much tied to Mabon, so this is a great time to be working with him. Okay. I see Joshua's here. Hi, Joshua. I may miss people in the chat. There's a lot here. He said he's super grateful for his practice. He hoped everyone has a good day. Kurt was mentioned cinnamon. I think he meant like about the herbs that you can use. Nancy said, "Thank you for doing this when you're not feeling well." Yes, I'm on day 6, so I thought this would be better. I feel like my mind is very cloudy. Like I feel like I'm not even sure I'm making any sense as I'm holding on here. But hopefully I'm making some sense. Um, let's see here. Colleen said I should be resting. I probably should. Yes, you're right. I will be after this. Andrea said in Minnesota the moon is beautiful and orange tonight. That's awesome. And Joshua said he said in Pennsylvania it's very beautiful too. Tommy hasn't seen the moon yet. Joanne said she's collecting storm water on a super moon. Oh, is it storming where you are? That's interesting. It's not here, but we have clear skies. Okay. Okay. So I think that if anybody's got any more questions, I'm not really seeing any. So I'm just going to end here tonight. Is somebody asking about a chakra? Is chakra similar to Native American chants? No. No, Tommy said no. The chakra is an energy center in the body. Yeah, so there are seven chakras, in seven main chakras in your energetic body, and they correspond to different things. On our Body Mind Witchcraft YouTube channel, that there are a lot of videos on the different chakras too, so you can go check those out if you want. Um, Okay, Joshua said, I missed you last week. Wouldn't have blamed you for passing tonight. I know, and you know, and I should. I should have, but it was because I missed last week. If I hadn't missed last week, I would have definitely canceled tonight. But I wanted to come and at least share some ideas for Mabon and say happy full moon to everybody. Okay, so I'm going to sign off. Next week, I will be here for sure. I don't know the topic yet. I haven't thought that far ahead, but I will plan that out and I will see you guys next week. And if you like what you hear, make sure to leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the video. That just helps us get it out to the feed of more people. And check out our Body Mind Witchcraft YouTube channel. And especially if you're watching back on that later in replay, make sure that you subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of the future episodes. Okay, so thanks to all who came tonight and sat with me through my sickness. I hope that you have a wonderful full moon tonight. Go out and watch that eclipse. It's going to be in about an hour if you're here live. And I will see you next time. And Mabon blessings to everyone and full moon blessings. Till next time, blessed be.